here. I just want to thank everybody for showing up. I just wanted to put a word in for a group that's local to you. If you are in Montgomery County, there's a group here. If after this conversation you would like to get active, or you would like to participate at whatever level, even if you just want to listen to the conversations we're having about this, we would love to have you. I'll put the email up. It's info at mocosafeg.org, and I'll put that up on the Zoom chat. But we're a group. We have actually 3 areas that we're focusing on if you live in any of these areas. Number 1 is Montgomery County in general. And we are constantly educating, sharing information, and looking for ways to influence our legislators on the Montgomery County Council to give them information about the potential dangers of 4G advanced and as well as 5G. We are also working, there's a group in Silver Spring. If you're in Silver Spring, if you live in Silver Spring, there's a group there specifically that's working on those issues within that community. And I'm in Rockville, and there's a small group of us in Rockville that is also working. We currently have a moratorium on for the Rockville City Council. There's right now everything is on pause. This is true for the county as well as Rockville City, but there's some legislative pursuits that are happening that may shift that in June. We're waiting to hear the result of some lawsuits that are out there that should come in June. And so everything in this moment is on pause, but we're using this time to continue educating, to continue having conversations with people on the county council, as well as the Rockville City Council. We would love your support, your input, your questions. Any way you want to participate, we welcome that, even if you just want to ask more questions. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that, so you can participate where and how you'd like. And I will put that email in the chat room, and you can follow up with us later. So thank you all so much for showing.
To everybody for joining us tonight. I hope you all are safe and are staying well. Social distancing out there is very, very important. So yes, so let me just jump right into it. The Montgomery County Coalition for the Control of Cell Towers was founded in 2016, and we were an outgrowth of a whole group of 15 wireless facilities that suddenly were planted in the North Potomac Gaithersburg area, and we have been expanding ever since in terms of the participation in our group. And I'm delighted and honored to be able to say that we have very, very significant representation from all different parts of the county, certainly not just clustered in North Potomac and Gaithersburg. And I think that has given us a lot more traction in our dealings with the county council over the last couple of years. But we have been fighting for, we continue to be fighting for 3 very simple things: fair, transparent, and accurate regulation of wireless facilities, cell poles, and cell towers, both the small cell and the macro cell facilities. And our focus is really on the minimizing adverse impacts to surrounding land uses, and why that's a key differential is that we discovered that there was a very important niche for us to fill, in that I think there were a number of extremely qualified groups, yours being one of them, Theodore, that are very focused on the health risks and the exposures to the environmental risks that are out there as a result of particularly the 5G technology. But we have been tackling the more specific technical elements of these towers because in the early years particularly, we're going to get to what changed this situation and very briefly, but in the early years, it was not uncommon for us to be blown off by a member of the council if we were trying to schedule a meeting, if we tried to raise the issue of health. And so we have been focusing pretty specifically on the technical aspects, the aesthetic aspects, the zoning aspects, the engineering aspects of applications that come up. Shown there on that picture is kind of, I hate to use this term, but it is probably the best way to describe it, the poster child for Montgomery County, and that is the pole at 7800 Brickyard Road. It's a 68-foot tall wireless facility that replaced a 34-foot stub guy pole in front of that house in 2011. And Montgomery County, through an unbelievable series of missteps, miscues, and completely wrongful interpretations of the zoning code and administrative procedures, allowed that facility to go in that front yard in a public rights of way, and they have refused to take it down ever since.
My message to the residents of Montgomery County is look no further than my front yard to see what is going on to your neighborhood. When the county allowed Pepco to remove a 30-foot pole directly outside my front door and replaced it with a 68-foot cell pole, that is just 42 feet from our bedrooms. We received no advance notice. We had no opportunity to offer any input. I only found out last year that cell pole is in the wrong place. The Tower Committee actually recommended on May 5th, 2010, that cell phone antenna to be installed on a specific pole that is across the street and 150 feet away from my house. This is clearly shown on the technical drawing submitted by Crown Castle with their application. And after installation, DPS permit also show the address across the street from where I live. The decision to remove the pole to be in front of my home was never decided at public meeting. 8 years later, that giant pole is still standing at the wrong address, and no one from the county has ever made any effort to correct those wrong, very obvious errors. Because what I see every day is that, first, the Tower Committee only recommend but has no responsibility for final decisions on placement of cell poles. Second, DPS has no accountability for accuracy of permits nor conformance with Tower Committee recommendations. Third, and most importantly, when mistakes are made, the county council had no desire nor the authority to fix or enforce anything. Council members fix the current process and vote no on ZTA 1907.
And still sits there 150 feet from where it was originally approved to be, and much, much larger than what would have been permissible, and also completely outside of the ordinance in terms of the minimum setbacks, which applied in 2011, which were 300 feet. So let me take you to the next slide. ZTA 1907, which is the latest incarnation of 3 previous attempts in the last couple of years that were introduced by Hans Riemer, was placed in suspended animation after some very, very aggressive community outreach and lobbying again. This is the 4th effort of his in 3 years. And one day before his committee, which was the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee, was scheduled to vote on the bill, realizing that he did not have the support of Andrew Friedson and Will Gerondo, who were the other 2 committee members. He pulled the vote. He didn't kill it, he just put it in suspended animation. And in some media reports that are out there, he has basically promised that it will come back in June. And that's a very significant date. I'm going to explain that in just a minute. The pole that you see there on the left side to show you how dysfunctional our zoning and administrative processes are, that pole is 34 feet from the nearest dwelling. Again, the minimum allowable when it was built in 2016 was 60 feet. And it very clearly says on the engineering schematics that were reviewed by the Tower Committee and the Tower Coordinator at that time, it says 34 feet from the nearest dwelling. And by golly, nobody seemed to raise any flags or have any concerns with that, even though the zoning code prohibits it. And so they installed it anyway. And it is not the closest poll to a residence in Montgomery County, but it certainly is one of the most dramatic when you see it on Travilla Road. Taking the next slide, what does ZTA 1907 do and why are we fighting it? Like its predecessors that started with 1605 and went to 1802 and 1811, 1907 basically seeks to make it faster, easier, and cheaper for big wireless to install bulky antennas, radio transmitters, and equipment just 30 feet from our front doors. The original bill, 1605, in 2016, which was introduced by Nancy Florine and co-sponsored by Hans Riemer, was going to put those poles just 20 feet from front doors. And so over the various iterations in the last 3 years, the distances have moved a little bit. This one has a 60 foot for limited use, but 30 feet for what I would have to call special conditional use, because the bill also seeks to change the rules dramatically on to make it extremely easy to get a conditional use approval for a small cell in a residential neighborhood. And that's what I mean by bending the OZA, the Office of Zoning and Hearing zoning rules, the rules by which they would conduct a hearing. I've already hit those points, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. The sort of wrinkle that was a speed bump for Hans Riemer this time around, and I say this time around, was that when he was leaving office in 2018, Ike Leggett managed to get the county council, of which Hans Riemer and Craig Rice were both members at the time. He managed to get the county council to unanimously support a lawsuit, which is the second lawsuit that I've listed here. And that lawsuit was to compel the FCC to update its RF emission standards, its radio frequency emission standards. There was another lawsuit that Montgomery County also participated in, the Smart Cities Coalition, Smart Communities Coalition, and that was to challenge the FCC's third order, which was a whole another set of rules to facilitate easier 5G rollout, mostly at the expense of the rights of local communities to control their rights of way, and also by substantially capping the fees and other miscellaneous charges that a municipal entity could assess on a small cell. These two lawsuits were out there. Montgomery County was participating in one of them. One of them was exclusive to Montgomery County, a remarkable change, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that used to be that the county council would throw us out if we ever came in and talked about health. And then all of a sudden, the county council sues the FCC about health. And they sort of changed the rules dramatically. Well, anyway, when we were in doing our lobbying, when a number of groups were doing the lobbying, and thanks to all of you that participated in that, because I know there were different folks out there that had met with all sorts of members from the county council, we pointed out to them, how is it possible that we're going to allow Hans Riemer to pass a zoning text amendment that is going to do many of the things that you are fighting the FCC in court on? How is it that we're going to allow this zoning ordinance to go forward if at the same time you are contesting these elements in the Ninth Circuit Court in California? And I got to hand it to Mr. Giolando and Mr. Friedman. They understood that argument and they shut the bill down in committee. That does not happen very often in Montgomery County, where you have an all-Democratic council that tends to work on a consensus basis. It's pretty rare to see the chairman's bill shut down in committee. They didn't totally shut it down. They just sort of temporarily put a freeze on it. And you can, on my website, the links that's shown in that photograph there is the actual presentation by lawyers representing Montgomery County and other jurisdictions against the FCC. The links are in an update on our website, mc4t.org, buried on an update that we just put in there a little while ago. So if you have the time, it is quite interesting to watch the questioning that's coming from the judges, the three judge panel there at the Ninth Circuit, because they asked very specifically, what is Montgomery County going to do to appeal the fact that the FCC counterattacked, which is what I wanted to talk about in my next slide, is that the members of the 5-member FCC, realizing that Montgomery County had an interesting lawsuit and probably had some traction with that lawsuit, right before the arguments were heard in February in the Ninth Circuit, they preemptorily issued order number 19-226 and basically said, you know what, the notice of inquiry that Montgomery County has been telling us that we needed to complete on RF emissions standards is completed. We don't have any science to back up our findings, which was that we don't need to make any changes, but we've completed our inquiry, and that's what Montgomery County asked for in this suit.
This rulemaking, which had begun much earlier, so why don't you address that?
So the burden in this court is heavy on the FCC. It has to show that there's no possible way for this court to give any relief. And so in our case, we're asking the FCC to explain in the context of this order why RF is either irrelevant or why it thinks it's important and how it's going to resolve this issue.
Why shouldn't you now? I mean, your complaint originally in the briefs was that the FCC should have completed this rulemaking.
Yes.
During the pendency of this appeal. They have now done that, and so why would you not raise any challenges you have to that rulemaking in a separate petition?
I would disagree that they have done that. They've done two things in those 6 pages where they close out the NOI. They talk about cell phones, which are not small cells, and then they have some conclusory statements that the record doesn't show that they need to update these RF standards. But nowhere in those 6 pages do they ever discuss the 5G environment. They don't discuss densification. They don't discuss the use of millimeter waves.
Yeah, that may be,
Right.
But why wouldn't the appropriate process here be for Montgomery County to now challenge that other rulemaking? Because the thrust of the argument initially was they just haven't completed the rulemaking, but now they've completed it. So why wouldn't you may have good arguments against that rulemaking, but how do we dispose of them in this case?
Because we didn't get the relief. If we have to go back to court and take another year to litigate this, we're not getting the relief that we want because it's our position that they actually haven't addressed the issue. Montgomery County wants to be able to tell its citizens it's putting these 5G small cells on its property. And the citizens are asking, is this safe? Or can we walk on our sidewalks? And if we have to go back and litigate for another year, that's a year that the carriers and the FCC is allowing these to be deployed. And so we have the evidence in the record showing that these may be dangerous, maybe they're not. But we don't have the answer to that question. And I think is...
We don't have the later action before us.
But they've raised the mootness issue, so I think the court now has the obligation to decide it. So, but I think on its face, I don't think the court has to do a lot of work.
Review the merits.
No, you don't have to.
It seems to me you're really disagreeing with the merits of that.
No, we're not disagreeing with the merits. I think on its face, they didn't address this issue. I don't think the court needs to dig into the record or anything. I think on its face, it literally decided not to address the issue that we asked, which was to clarify, is this a potential risk or isn't it? And so we can go back to our citizens and we can take whatever steps we need to take to deal with these new small cells. And so I think in the context, I think our case is rather simple. It's kind of an APA case. In this order, our order, not the one we were just talking about, they don't explain their decision. They had a single sentence. Despite the fact that you have this huge record of concern, of studies, of research.
So, counsel, in the other matter, the matter that's closed, is that subject to appeal? Have you taken a notice of appeal on that one?
Yes.
Being arbitrary and capricious? Is that pending, and where is that pending?
So there are 2 cases, one here in the 9th that I know of, one here in the 9th and one in the DC Circuit.
Are they going to be consolidated?
Yes, I think under 2112, yes, they'd be consolidated.
You know where they're going to be consolidated?
I think DC won the race to the courthouse.
And when are those going to be heard?
We don't know yet. They were just filed. So I see I have 1 more minute left, and I'd like to reserve that for any rebuttal.
Thank you.
And in that photograph that I just showed you a moment ago from the video that was taken in the Ninth Circuit, the 3 judges on the panel were saying, well, wait a minute, what are you doing to appeal? What are you doing to appeal the action of the FCC in this particular case? And the lawyers came back and said, well, we're not appealing, which was kind of a dumbfounding thing. The Montgomery County Council had told our lawyers to tell the 3 the judges on the panel that Montgomery County is not appealing the decision by the FCC to pull the legs out from underneath its lawsuit. In other words, to take another step, to take another legal action to try to block that. The good news is, and again, I'm not going to steal your thunder on this, Theodora, is that the Environmental Health Trust did file that appeal, even though Montgomery County has not signed on as a, amicus curiae brief or do its own appeal. Fortunately, the EHT did. And the other great piece of news about it is the fact that the attorney that they're using is a Montgomery County, Maryland attorney who just recently also did something extraordinary, which was to win a victory against the FCC. But again, I don't want to steal the thunder on that, and we'll come back to that if we can, Theodora, and let you talk about that in just a moment. Okay. But the important thing is that the FCC counterattacked. Montgomery County held a secret, I call it secret, but it was an executive session on January 28th, and they made a decision on January 28th to not appeal, apparently. And the ridiculous thing is that none of this is visible to the public because it was an executive session request that apparently was put forward by Hans Riemer the day of the council meeting, so it wasn't even on the agenda. And it was announced verbally. They closed into executive session. Executive session has members of the council, their chief legislative aides, and some other special invitees, including the legal counsel that was representing the county. But the decision that came out of that meeting apparently was we are not going to appeal the action of the FCC, which is absolutely dumbfounding. And I personally feel this, I'm not a lawyer, but I personally feel that our lawsuit, the second lawsuit that I had on my slide there a minute ago about the RF emissions, will be thrown out by the Ninth Circuit in California. I'm not going to make a prediction on where we're going with the litigation on the third order, but I believe that the Ninth Circuit will throw out our own lawsuit, which means that what EHT is doing is the last best help on the whole issue of the RF frequency emissions. Quickly moving on to some other projects, because we have a lot going on in the county. Back in November 2019, during testimony against 1907, we've already had a public hearing on 1907, and we've also already had a committee markup session on 1907. That's why I believe Hans will have it be roaring to go in June. But in one of the things that was little noticed that evening, because it was a very emotional evening, that the audience was jam-packed. I think I have it in my update, but I think there were 25 speakers against 1907. There were 8 various people who spoke in favor of 1907, of which 5 of them were either employees of or lobbyists for the wireless industry. They couldn't even find any residents to support the bill that Hans is trying to put out there. And one of those speakers, one of the 3 of the 8 that were actually residents, was an employee of the fire department who is responsible for wireless technology. He's the one that's pushing through the macro towers, and Hans had just done him a huge favor on the macro towers. I could explain that later if you'd like. But the bottom line was that Debbie Spielberg, who is absolutely terrific, presented testimony on behalf of the county executive. And in that testimony, the county executive said that he had instructed the various agencies to provide him with updated regulations that would improve notice to residents about wireless facilities that are planned or being considered. Recover, they used the term cover, but what they meant was recover all of the county's costs for regulating and enforcing cell tower ordinances. Right now, the fees that are being charged are wholly inadequate, and as a result of it, the taxpayers are completely subsidizing the regulatory approval process for the wireless companies. And then finally, ensure that every new small cell deployment is inspected for compliance. We've discovered over time that the Department of Permitting Services, which is responsible for zoning compliance checks with actual inspections of what was built and what is supposed to be maintained, has been doing none of these things. And so he has instructed supposedly the Department of Permitting Services and the Tower Committee to come up with some better procedures that would update the way the Tower Committee operates, and which also would provide these three things that I've put there in the bullet points.
But we also owe it to taxpayers, including our business community and the wireless industry, to evaluate what has gone right and what may need improvement. And the executive believes that we will have a better final product the more we involve residents. We also agree that improvements are needed, and the county executive believes that together we can do this well, efficiently, sensibly, and in a manner that respects our residents and addresses our technological needs.
Another very, very important thing is that the county executive embraced the need to study a hierarchy that would say that we're only going to allow a wireless facility in a residential neighborhood if there's nowhere else we can put it outside of that residential neighborhood. In other words, most of our neighborhoods throughout the county are connected by what the county refers to as high-speed, high-volume roadways. Those are roadways with speed limits of 35 miles an hour or more that are your secondary roads, and those then lead into the neighborhood streets. And his theory was, let's see if we can't figure out how to do rules that would keep those kinds of wireless facilities out on those roads, where they will not be as obtrusive and impactful, theoretically at least, as they would be if we allowed them to go inside the neighborhoods. And supposedly he was going to have the staff work with technical experts, residents, the individual county agencies, and the industry to address these and other issues. To my understanding, there has not yet been any kind of a joint meeting, but I do know that they have met individually with these groups. I know that his staff is kind of kicking this around, but I wouldn't call it a formal review process at this point. But we continue to push on these issues, and we continue to work on a whole range of structural improvements that would make our totally dysfunctional process at least somewhat more functional. Certainly, as opposed to letting Hans Riemer come through with another zoning text amendment before we fix the administrative dysfunction that's out there. Huge thing that is going to be impacting us this summer. I think it's been slowed down a little bit by COVID-19, is the Public Systems Safety Modernization Project. And this is a stunning number of brand new macro towers that are being built in the county and will be constructed this summer. As I understand it, Motorola, which has the county contract, and also will be building some towers for other entities, I'm going to explain in just a minute, will be bringing crews into the county sometime between now and the end of the summer to construct both lattice towers and monopoles and I've listed some of them there for you. The ones that the county will own are in Black Rock, Bretton Woods, Brookville, Burtonsville, Damascus, Potomac, and Silver Spring. There are 2 more that WMATA will own that will be at the Shady Grove and Georgia Avenue, and Wheaton stations. And there's a 250-foot tower that the state of Maryland will own that will be at the ICC and Georgia Avenue. It's going to make a huge impact to the skyline of most communities in the outer areas of the county. And when I say outer areas, if you take an arc all the way from the Potomac River and go all the way around to Burtonsville, you're going to see the impact of these towers out there that are going to be going up, and they're all very tall. They're much taller, in fact, than what the code would normally allow. We fought them on the areas that are highlighted in red with the limited resources that we have, because these are very complicated to fight. But we did testify in front of the planning board on the Damascus Tower. That's the tallest of all of them, 262 feet, and the Silver Spring Tower. And there was a tremendous effort by the residents in the neighborhoods surrounding Blair High School on the Silver Spring Tower that's proposed at Fire Station 16. Anyway, make a long story short, the planning board approved every one of them. Tower committee is sailed through. Every one of them were approved by the Tower committee.
Would you want it where you live or next to where your children attend school? It was important to our committee resident members and the capable planning staff to put language in the master plan that nothing ever be done to detract from the residential neighborhoods or the visual appearance of where we live. How does a looming, above all else, 200-foot tower fit into that? It is completely out of scale to everything in the residential and commercial area. There was a meeting with representatives from the Department of Technology, the Fire Department, and community members at Blair High School in April of 2018. That's the same Blair High School with over 3,000 students, and the principal has not been notified of the 200-foot tower. The Blair High School property is right next to the 200-foot tower location. One of the main questions that night was if alternate sites were considered and studied. We were told no, but they will be.
And as I say, the construction is scheduled to go forward. There is a potential speed bump here too, as well. And that is that we all know that municipal funding, both for counties and cities, is going to be in a real crisis as a result of the COVID reductions in tax revenues. It's not only impacting people's salaries, but it's also going to be impacting tax revenues. And this project, which I'm estimating, the county has never ever declared the actual expenses that are going to be required for the construction of these towers. It's impossible to find that data. But I'm projecting that it's somewhere close to $25 to $30 million to build these towers and put all the equipment up there and all the related control devices that go with it. It's all borrowed money. It is not coming out of current tax revenues. It is capital funding that would be borrowed money. And I could actually see the county going, whoa, wait a minute. We don't have the resources to borrow this. We're going to need whatever money we can borrow will have to be used to cover other critical gaps. And I'm not sure that this project will be something that they determine to be a critical gap. We'll wait and see. But right now, all the approvals that need to be cleared have been cleared, and it's supposed to go forward. But the piece of it that relates to these towers that I'm showing you right there is probably somewhere around $25 to $30 million of the $110 million total project value. I only have a few more slides. Are you trying to interrupt me there, Theodore? Go ahead.
No, when you're done, I'm going to do a brief overview of our lawsuit and talk about a few other details that people have been asking about. But I think it's important to talk about the cabinets, and because
okay, yeah. Let me just whip through these real quick and explain the other project that we're working on. In addition to trying to update the individual procedural regulations that are out there, in addition to trying to slow down and get a better set of sites chosen for the Public System Safety Modernization, we were also involved in an ongoing series of applications that come forward to the Tower Committee. The most recent ridiculous set that are out there is a whole stack of applications for ground-mounted cabinets. And I'm going to use the illustration of Santa Rosa, California, because people go, well, you know, this could never happen here. What happened in Santa Rosa could never happen here. But let me just show you what happened in Santa Rosa. This is 721 Link Lane in Santa Rosa, California. You can look it up on your Google map. This is what the front of the house looked like in July 2015 before ground-mounted cabinets showed up. Now, if you look very carefully of the photograph on the right where it says, no, stop this, you can go back and see this on the fire thing, see the color combinations of the garages there. This is what happens when Verizon put in ground-mounted cabinets. And you can see that they left the cabinets that are on the pole in front of the house, and they added that great big thing on the concrete platform between the sidewalk and the curb. That is infamously called a ground-mounted cabinet. It's got, it has radio equipment, it has battery backup equipment. They can be very noisy. They are tall enough to completely block a small child if they're not well sighted or well positioned. Not only are they extremely ugly, but they are also hazardous to pedestrian safety in terms of particularly anywhere near intersections. The pole on the left, for illustration purposes, is what Verizon had told the city of Santa Rosa that they thought a typical design would look like for their towers. I don't have a picture of the top of this particular pole, but I'm pretty certain that it does not have a single antenna encased in a canister as it's shown here. Nor does it have little small boxes like you see that are well up above, 15, 20 feet high. What they did put in was the pole on the right. What they had been told the city council was the pole on the left. Ultimately, Santa Rosa became so enraged on what was going around, they put a stop order on Verizon. In other words, a moratorium, and Verizon has yet to figure out what they're going to do to get around that. What's going on in Montgomery County, and I'm showing you a picture of the owner of 721 Link Lane there, is that Montgomery County is proposing to do the same thing in about, let's see, 20 plus locations. We have ground-mounted cabinets proposed at Potomac and Darnestown. That's where they're proposed now. But what's happening is this is establishing a precedent that will allow Crown Castle, which owns most of these facilities that are currently mounted on Pepco poles, to bring these facilities down onto the ground and start spreading them out onto the public rights-of-way. We have been arguing till we're blue in the face with the Tower Committee, who refuses to listen to anything that we have to say about this stuff, that not only does these changes represent something that is far beyond the scope of a minor modification, even as defined by the FCC, but some of them are being proposed on rural rustic roads where there are supposed to be no types of changes like this on the ground surrounding the public rights-of-way where there are utility poles. And we continue to fight them because the precedent will allow these to go in Silver Spring, Bethesda, anywhere in the county where the Tower Committee has authority. Tacoma Park would allow these ground-mounted cabinets to go up and would basically save Crown Castle a whole ton of money by allowing them to just spread this equipment out all over the public rights-of-way between the curb and the sidewalks. What's also very important about Montgomery County and highlighting the dysfunction is that for many, many years, 20 years to be exact, the Department of Permitting Services, for reasons that have never been explained, had refused to issue permits for anything that was being mounted on a utility pole. They just simply said, you know what, permits don't need to be issued because it's a Pepco pole and we don't regulate Pepco poles, even though it's for a third-party attacher. So there's a whole bunch of facilities that they are now letting these ground-mounted cabinets expand out on that were never actually properly approved in the first place. Many of them should have gone through conditional use hearings and other proceedings which would have ruled them impermissible, non-compliant. but the Tower Committee, DPS, everybody has been ignoring that, even with the current attempt to put the ground-mounted cabinets up there. So it's been an interesting fight, and we have, by the way, involved folks from the county executive's office, and they've listened to us, but so far we haven't been able to make anything to slow down or stop the approvals by both Tower Committee and DPS. And some of the first ground-mounted cabinets will also probably appear this summer, even though we continue to fight it. That is my email address. Also, as I mentioned before, we are on our website, mc4t.org, or you can follow us on Twitter. And we have a couple of Twitter posts. We try to do them every once in a while up there. And with that, I'm gonna take a breath, Theodora, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. What I'd like to do is now pull out to the national and international situation related to 5G and the deployment of small cells.
Maybe you've heard about exciting new 5G technology that promises to make our connections to the internet and all of the things connected to the internet faster and better than ever. Like other cell phone technology, 5G emits radiation. 2 federal agencies recently said the available scientific evidence does not support the idea that 5G emits enough radiation to hurt people. But some scientists disagree. At first, the concerns sounded far-fetched. We were surprised by what we learned. Is it your feeling that mobile phone use and 5G in the future have been and are causes of chronic disease epidemics in this country?
I believe that the exposures we already have are producing major effects already on our health, and that 5G will be vastly worse than anything that we are already exposed to.
At least 3 expert medical groups have linked certain kinds of electromagnetic fields, or EMFs, to cancer, particularly childhood leukemia. The U.S. National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, a working group under the World Health Organization, and a European scientific committee, which studied cell phones in particular. Paul says there's more to worry about.
What's been shown is you get depression, I can't sleep, I'm tired all the time, I'm depressed, I've got headaches, I can't concentrate, I'm anxious. All the things that everybody complains about now, we know are caused by EMF exposures. And not just one type, but multiple types of EMF exposures.
Stop 5G! We want great technology! The concerns are shared by citizens and scientists around the world.
These antennas are being installed without our permission, without any warning at all. Many of us do not want to be guinea pigs in this experiment, but we apparently have no say in the matter.
Progress or a nuisance? Tonight, the Montgomery County Council debated a new proposal to build new 5G cell towers near people's homes. People who opposed the idea staged a protest before the meeting. They said the cell towers could harm people's health and the environment, and they will damage the look of some communities.
There are studies which show that when you have a big cell tower or something like that in front of your house,
5G network transmitters now are popping up in D.C. as cell carriers are expanding the next generation of wireless access in our nation's capital. But in Montgomery County, a vocal opposition is raising health concerns, and it's rising up again tonight. 7 on your side's Jay Korf now with the county's plan and the opposition. Jay?
Yeah, good evening, Jonathan. For some, this is a simple issue. It's about smart business decisions in the county and economic development and growth. For others, they believe this is a public health crisis.
Represent the children, not the corporations. No 5G.
Protesters of a proposal to allow telecommunications companies to erect small 5G cell antennas in front of homes, similar to this one in front of a school in Rockville, say this issue is not about technology, it's about health.
There are literally thousands of independent scientists ringing the alarm bell on 5G.
Theodora Scarata with Environmental Health Trust says studies show radio frequency radiation is bad for plants, animals, and humans.
They want to make money, they want to roll this out, and they don't care about our health. And it's up to us as citizens to fight back.
A position the industry and its supporters disputed Tuesday night at a public hearing on this matter.
Why is 5G important? 5G is the future of broadband in this country. Bottom line.
Supporters say 5G is what consumers want and need in an ever-changing world.
From a business, economic development, and quality of life standpoint, Verizon strongly supports efforts to enable investment in a ubiquitous small cell network in Montgomery County and the region.
And we should note that the National Institutes of Health, NIH, is so concerned about the potential impacts of radio frequency radiation on the human population that they are studying 5G as we speak.
Just to continue looking at what these look like, here are just some other examples of antennas on your utility poles. This is a picture of, it's a macro tower in front of someone's home, but it's why I do the work I do. Our organization is contacted on a regular basis, and people send us their pictures and say, should I be worried about this? And with small cells, these will be right outside bedroom windows, just like with this apartment building.
In late December, Verizon installed a very powerful cell antenna right outside my daughter's window. About a month after the antenna was installed, both my daughters came down with cold and flu-like symptoms. Another month passed and my daughters were still ill. We began to wonder if the recently installed antennas could be affecting their health. My brother Noah, who is a scientist in the family, began researching the safety of cell antennas and the radiation that they emit. He found hundreds of studies and experts warning about the dangers of wireless radiation, including immune system suppression, which I believe my daughters have suffered, and cancer, one of the diseases we all fear the most.
So the lawsuit that we're working on, Environmental Health Trust has filed a legal appeal against the FCC. Our way that we both measure this radiation and the allowable levels that we have for cell phones, all wireless devices, as well as what is allowed to just be in the air related to cell tower networks and how much of this wireless radiation is in the air, have been unchanged since 1996, when the EPA was defunded from setting proper safety standards where they know what a safe level is. And instead, the FCC adopted guidelines from industry-filled and industry-loyal groups, and they're based on research from 10 years prior. So in 2013, the FCC opened up an inquiry calling on, should we change these standards? Do they need to be changed to protect people, to protect us against non-thermal effects? Because just backing up, the current limits were not based on an understanding of the effect of long-term exposure. They're based around modeling that looked at a large adult male, not children. They didn't investigate the impacts to birds or bees or trees, and of course to children and pregnant women. So what happened was there have been over 2,000, I think we're up to 2,000 submissions to the FCC showing science, showing harm, various kinds of effects that have been documented in literature from scientists, and also the vulnerability of children, all of the research which we talk about on our website, Environmental Health Trust. And yet in December, the FCC said, well, we looked at the docket, meaning all of the submissions. And by the way, in those submissions were from, our wireless companies as well, and the wireless lobbyist groups who meet regularly with the FCC. And they said there's no need to change the limits. So our appeal is because the FCC has ignored all of the science that was submitted in the docket. All of the science that we've talked about, the National Toxicology Program study, which they found clear evidence of cancer.
The issue that to me is most important is what are we doing to the future generations, the kids who will be exposed for most of their lifetime to this type of radiation. We need to understand the risks to not have them exposed to levels which could be harmful and potential increased cancer risk. It's not the 70-year-old people. So if a 70-year-old male says to you, he's not concerned, great. But that isn't why the study was conducted. It was conducted to find out what is the risk to the general population, and in particular, children, as they continuously are exposed to this type of radiation.
In animals, studies like the Italian Ramazzini Institute study, which found the same kind of tumors as we found in the National Toxicology Program, but at much lower levels. There are studies that looked at cell tower radiation and found changes to blood and so on. And all of that is on our website. So, you know, when you follow the money, things become much more clear. And what I'm showing you is actually the cover of a white paper by Swiss Re Institute and Insurance Authority, where they have classified 5G as high impact, a high impact emerging risk. And they talk about all of the issues related to the Internet of Things, from privacy and you know, smart cities, but they also talk about as a potential impact as the biological effects of EMF in general, and 5G in particular still are being debated. Potential claims for health impairments may come with a long latency. And insurance companies will not insure for the health damages from electromagnetic fields. And we have all of that on our website. I want to point out that the companies that are putting up these antennas inform their shareholders about the potential financial risks. And Crown Castle says if frequency emissions from wireless handsets or equipment on our communications infrastructure are demonstrated to cause negative health effects, potential future claims could adversely affect our operations costs or revenues, and we currently do not maintain any significant insurance with respect to these matters. Now, one of the things that actually cities across the United States are doing now are starting to look at the issue of insurance. How can we move forward with this when there is no insurance? Because who's going to be left holding the ball? It's going to be the taxpayers. And that's a whole subject that we can talk about, and I think is being vetted right now legally as well. In other parts of the world, 5G is being halted, slowed down. And actually I have to update this slide, there are now 300 cities in Italy that have passed halt 5G resolutions. Those are the official, the elected officials are passing those in cities. There are protests happening. This is Amsterdam, Australia, and all of these are online. This is just 30 seconds. California, many cities in California, Belgium. There was protest in South Africa, Italy, and so on. That's Australia. So, and the reason why in other countries there's so much opposition to the rollout of 5G is because they have different cell tower radiation limits than we do in the United States and Australia. And they allow, many European countries allow less radiation in terms of their permissible levels in the environment. And industry is saying that in order to roll out 5G, that level needs to be increased, and the countries are saying, no, we don't want to change our levels that we have set. So I talked about all the many different countries which are doing different things, like having research reports, some of which turn out to be saying, well, there's no research showing harm, so we're going to move ahead. But let me go to the United States. New Hampshire, Louisiana, and Oregon have all started investigations into the health effects of wireless Some in particular 5G. New Hampshire has an incredible, we have all of this on our website, on our page on international action. They have been interviewing experts from around the world and around the country on the health and environmental effects. Different cities are passing protective or more protective ordinances. And I will call out Los Altos, California, where small cell installations on public utility easements in residential neighborhoods is prohibited. And there's setbacks from schools, 500 feet, and from multifamily residences in commercial districts. And also, most recently, Santa Barbara, California, Keene, New Hampshire have halted 5G. So I won't go into all of these. There are reports from Europe where the parliament is ordering reports that are looking into this. And one of the really important issues, which I found mind-blowing when I learned about this, was that there are all these discussions about measurements. How do you even measure this radiation? And many scientists who say the way we measure is not adequate to even understand what the biological effects will be. But the European Parliament, and there have been several reports on this, is saying that we can't even accurately simulate or measure 5G emissions in the real world because the antennas are different than the current antennas we have. And there are beams, actually what looks like one antenna will have multiple beams coming out of it. And so all of this is going on. This is Juhi Chawla in India, who is an actress who's very active on this issue. I'm not going to play her speech. She received the Indira Gandhi Award. And I'm just going to move forward. I just wanted to mention two things. One was impacts to birds and bees, because there hasn't been an environmental review, not in the United States, and not, Montgomery County could be looking at what will the impact be to our bees, birds, and trees.
Something is killing the bees, that much is certain. Britain has seen a 17% decline in the bee population over the last year. In the United States, it's around 30%. It's been dubbed colony collapse disorder. Experts say possible culprits are a pest called varroa, pesticides, climate change and loss of habitat. Now, some say, add to that the possible radiation from mobile phones. New research from scientists at Punjab University in India claims microwave radiation from mobile phones could be part of the problem. Researchers fitted mobile phones to a hive and powered them up for 2 15-minute periods each day. After 3 months, they found the bees stopped producing honey, egg production by the queen bee halved, and the size of the hive dramatically reduced. I spoke to an independent scientist in the UK about how the bees might have been affected. He pointed out that bees have a pigment called cryptochrome.
Animals, including insects, use cryptochrome for navigation. They use it to sense the direction of the Earth's magnetic field. And its ability to do this is compromised by the radiation from mobile phones and their base stations. So basically, bees do not find their way back to the hive.
Dr. Goldsworthy has written to the UK communications regulator Ofcom suggesting they change the phone frequencies so bees won't be confused.
It is possible to modify the signal coming from the mobile phone and the base station in such a way that it doesn't produce the frequencies that disturb the cryptochrome molecule. So they could do this without the signal losing its ability to transmit information.
Ofcom's passed the details on to the mobile phone companies. We spoke to the Mobile Phone Operators Association. They responded. Research scientists have already considered possible factors involved in colony collapse disorder and have identified the areas for research into the causes of CCD, which does not include exposure to radio waves. And expert bee scientists are sceptical.
We know they're sensitive to magnetic fields. What we don't know is what use they actually make of that. And nobody has as yet actually demonstrated that honeybees make use of the Earth's magnetic field when navigating. Generally pretty friendly this time of year.
But why does the future of the humble bee matter?
So this is honey that's been sealed over, and this is fresh honey or possibly nectar.
Flowering plants need insects for pollination, insects like the honeybee. The honeybee is one of the most effective, and it pollinates around 90 commercial crops worldwide. The commercial value of bees' pollination estimated here in the UK at $290 million, while in the USA it's currently estimated at around about $12 billion per year. Imagine a world without bees, a loss of orchards or meadows and flowering plants. No honey. The reality? No one knows exactly why the bees are dying, but one thing is certain: bees matter. Sasha Herriman, CNN, Sussex.
The former U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, who are experts on this, filed in the FCC docket that I was talking about impacts to bird reproduction and health. There's research that looked at how do 5G frequencies, the higher frequencies of 5G, millimeter waves, how would they impact bees? And there are now only 2 studies that have ever been published on this that I'm aware of. And what they found is that these higher frequencies actually interact with bees differently than the frequencies we have now. And what you're looking at are basically kind of like heat maps showing the rate of absorption into the Western honeybee. There's a study that looked at 5 insects, and this is pulled from that. So, and these researchers are warning that this could lead to changes in insect behavior, physiology, and morphology over time. And lastly, I want to talk about trees. There's research, all of this is on our site, showing impacts to trees over time from antennas when they're aimed at the tree. And this is just a picture showing the antennas and showing the damage to the tree. This is a study that was a field study for several years, looking at dozens of trees. And I didn't mean for that to be in there, and I'm sorry. And then there is the issue of the cutting of trees, the trimming of trees, of the tree canopy, not to mention digging in the ground to put all the wires and everything that's needed. What will that impact be? So none of this has been adequately investigated by Montgomery County, not by the federal government, not by the state government, and 5G is going to impact our health, the environment, at many levels. So, Rick, could you talk a little bit about what your organization is doing now as like the main, what your main goals are in terms of the zoning ordinance?
Absolutely. We have a tremendous volunteer by the name of Sue Present, who has drafted a remarkable document, absolutely a remarkable document, which she refers to as the comprehensive antenna proposal. And what she has done in this 80-page document is to meticulously take all of the different sections from the various portions of the Montgomery County zoning ordinance, which runs hundreds of pages in and of itself, and relevant regulatory sections from various county regulations that deal with everything from the Department of Permitting Services to construction ordinances and so forth, and has blended those, having been inspired and informed by other model communities that have used more progressive regulatory approaches toward wireless, into this amazing document called the Comprehensive Antenna Proposal. And what we have been seeking to do, we haven't gotten a lot of traction so far, is to convince our council to do a complete overhaul of the way that we regulate wireless facilities in Montgomery County. What we have been able to achieve so far is kind of a three-step progression. And the first step is we hope to be able to get Mark Elrich to give us some administrative relief using his powers as county executive to simply make the Tower Committee and the Department of Permitting Services and the Office of Zoning and Hearings, which unfortunately is controlled by the council because of the way our county government is set up, but certainly for the Department of Permitting Services and also the Tower Committee to help us fix some of the administrative nightmares that are out there. Our databases that don't make sense, that don't list all the facilities, our amazing number of wireless facilities that don't have permits, that are not in conformance with the code because no one ever did zoning inspections on them. The rooftop antenna facilities like those that we've discovered in Tacoma Park, which are 2,593% above what is permissible under current FCC guidelines, which are already unbelievably out of date and unbelievably generous to the wireless companies. And here we have a facility on a Tacoma Park apartment building that's 2,593% out of compliance. So we're trying very, very hard to do the administrative fixes. Then we'd like to come up with some design standards. We just found out, interestingly enough, that the city of Aspen, Colorado has come up with tremendous little design standards. And if the city of Aspen, Colorado, which is a teeny tiny little place, relatively speaking, amazingly famous ski resort, but not a very big municipality, if they can do it, why can't Montgomery County have our own design standards? And then finally, we'd like to be able to put in a truly comprehensive zoning ordinance that would embody some of the things that I was talking about earlier, where we would have a hierarchy of locations that would be from the most preferred to the least preferred. And the absolute least preferred would be residential neighborhoods or daycare centers or hospitals. And the areas that would be the highest preference would be the ones that are already areas where, because of zoning and other architectural elements that are there, industrial zones, commercial zones, we might have, or high-speed, high-volume roadways, we would be more willing to put those kinds of towers rather than putting them directly adjacent in close proximity to people's residences or to schools or hospitals or other places that people live, work, and play. That's really what that's our big set of goals that we have there. We have encountered far more resistance than we thought we would from the county council, which has been, I think, afraid of the wireless industry, and I think also afraid of the complexity of the issues that are being presented to them. But we're making a little bit of traction, and I wanted to kind of end, if I could, by saying that those of you that are on the call from Montgomery County, Maryland, if you would please thank Will Giwando and Andrew Friedson, two brand new members of the council, who stood up to Hans Riemer, the chairman of their committee, and said, no, you know what, Hans, we're going to wait. We're not going to rush this thing through. They really did, for two junior members of the council, they really did a wonderful thing, and I want to make sure that we thank them profusely the next time you see them. We're going to need their votes in the future.
And contacting your city council members and talking about this issue. If you're in a city, talking to your your local officials about this issue and just letting them know what you would like is so important. They need to hear from you, and regularly. I can't say that enough. I also would recommend talking to your neighbors and your family about this issue and spreading the word, because many hands make light work. And it won't be long before there's going to be a state bill as well, where there will be a proposal to, it wouldn't matter what Montgomery County says or any county says, to streamline 5G and small cells into neighborhoods. And about half of the states in the United States, they have been passed. In Maryland, I think it's been 3 years that we've been able to stave it off. I think 3 years. so far?
Yeah, so far we've been successful in keeping any industry bills out of the state legislature, but they come back every single year, and I'm sure they're going to be back this coming year. So we just have to keep pushing back on them as hard as we can.
Well, there's not a hearing set for the ZTA coming up.
No, there's the hearing has been held, and so actually at this point, if Hans Riemer could get Jawando and Friedson to vote it out of the committee, he could bring it to the full council and actually manage to get it on the agenda for a vote this summer, which is not a bad thing for him. As he would love to be able to get something like this approved in July or August, when theoretically, under normal situations, most people would be out of town. But he's done all of the preliminary detail work that would allow this thing to come for a vote for the council very quickly once it's reintroduced. So we won't have a lot of time to fight back on it. So we have some things up our sleeve that we're going to do this spring, just to kind of keep him on his toes and put him on the defensive a little bit.
And if you're listening,
stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that has been happening is different homeowners associations or local community groups are having meetings. Rick's presented, I presented. There are people who can come. Of course, now there are no meetings, but if you're doing it live, we can do webinars or having community conversations just to educate people about the reality that this is happening and how to get involved in a decision-making process about this. And something I haven't even talked about is the climate impacts, because the amount of energy that is going to be used with 5G has been the subject of several reports because of all of the new installations and all of the new devices. There are climate change think tanks which are issuing reports saying this is a problem, we cannot do this. Even though there are, we're making things more energy efficient, our electronics, it can't catch up with the fact that there are literally going to be hundreds of thousands of new facilities and billions of new interconnected devices. So this is an issue also to address, and I know our county is always at the, working at the top of this, and this should be included in the conversation. But all of these issues, bees, trees, aesthetics, these big boxes, permitting issues are really not being adequately addressed. And Rick, I don't know if you, that facility on Brickyard Road, the first picture you showed, is that equipment still sitting there in front of her house?
Yes, it is still sitting there. I'm going to share back my screen if I could do that here. Hang on a second. Let's see if it comes back. The tragedy of this entire thing is that Vicki Ho has testified twice now before the county council and has tried to get the message across that no agency will stand up and take responsibility for this outrageous breach of processes that allowed this pole to go in there. And it has been the subject of national television media coverage. It was included in a filing that the county filed to the FCC, believe it or not. The attorney for the county actually referenced this pole. I'm sorry, the consultant for a lawsuit that the county was involved in against the FCC actually referenced this pole as what should not be done in a municipal, a county or a local government when it comes to approving poles. And so, but it's just sitting there. And if you actually dug through the trees, I love to tell this story to people, it has an address sticker on it that shows the wrong address. The Crown Castle people that identify the cabinet showing an address across the street 150 feet away. So it's just a tangled mess. And but no one has stood up in the county and actually said, okay, Crown Castle, you have to take this thing down. What we are waiting for at this point is that those antennas that you see at the top, which by the way are supposed to be enshrouded, in a canister, never were. What we're waiting for is the equipment on that pole is now 10 years old, effectively 10 years old, and it's going to have to be replaced because they have been replacing the equipment on poles in that particular DAS network, distributed antenna system network, all through Potomac. And at some point, they're going to have to put through an application, and they're going to try to get that changed. And that's when we intend to jump on them, because we will come down on them really hard that they could never demonstrate that the facility was allowed to have been there in the first place. So, but so far, the owners of that equipment have stayed away from putting in any changes.
Someone asked about where is a map of the proposed towers, and I wanted to share my screen with you.
Oh yeah, let me take mine off then. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is, well, these are the 2016 applications. There's actually several maps online, but just to show you what began all of this. And this shows different applications for different, let me see how to go, different areas. And I'm not sure this is, Rick, can you see what I'm looking at? Because I'd like to know where the current map is. This is 216.
Well, I mentioned to you before that one of the things that we're trying to get the Tower Committee to admit to is that the various databases and maps that they have, and that cluster right there is the Potomac Cluster, and that's a really good, actually, excuse me, that's North Potomac. That's a good area to talk about right there, because you can see that there are a whole bunch of black triangles, and if you go to the legend on the top right there, they are referenced as decorative lights. Those were applied for, and then they were quote unquote tabled, and some of them may have actually at this point been removed from the active consideration, but those were supposed to have been embedded inside of neighborhoods. They never were. The black triangles were never actually installed in the neighborhoods of Potomac that are there. Some of the if you go down into Potomac, I think if you can kind of zip down there a little bit closer to the Potomac River, yeah, it goes south now. Yeah, that cluster of white triangles there, those are all poles in Potomac. And what's interesting, if you look very closely at that map, is that the picture I just showed you of 7800 Brickyard Road is improperly displayed on that database. It's showing the wrong address and the wrong location. And some of the other poles that are configured on that map are in the wrong locations, where the database that the Tower Committee has is not accurate for the actual locations, which, by the way, is a violation of county code. The database is supposed to reflect everything. The red stars that you see right there are in the Silver Spring cluster, and some of those reflect, some of those will reflect rooftops of buildings that are down there, because you've got tall buildings in the Silver Spring area that are around in there. Same thing with you go over to the Tacoma Park area, where there's a lot of residential structures that are in there. So some of those are in there. By the way, that map that you're looking at does not include all facilities. So it's a very, very confusing thing for residents to go to the databases that are maintained, various databases that are maintained by the Tower Committee, because it is not immediately evident of what has been installed, what has been proposed, what has been actually recommended and built. And we're trying to get the Tower Committee to admit that they don't know and that they need to fix it. But they so far have been loath to do that. They will not do it. So.
What I would add is that getting transparency on where they proposed and what the process is a challenge in many communities, and it should be so easy for us to know where is it proposed, It shouldn't be complicated. It should be easy to find. And that has been an ongoing challenge. Now, I would say the pictures that you saw are nothing compared to what's to come. I mean, what we're talking about is throughout all the neighborhoods of Montgomery County. They might not be here now, but if the doors are open, industry is talking about needing to have them every couple on a block, because once you get one kind of antenna technology in, all of the carriers want to have their own antennas. And there's a lot of discussions about can they share, and it depends on the technology. And this is a whole issue is, well, how many will there be on our block? I know in Washington, D.C., they're talking about several on a block. And in Washington, D.C., there are leases that have already, master agreements that have already been signed. And the discussion is around what they will look like, not how to, restrict them. But I think we can get some more transparency here in Montgomery County for sure.
Well, and that's where you want to head this stuff off, because make no mistake about it, I made this point on other conversations, the lobbyists for Crown Castle, for Verizon, for AT&T, they're very sharp, very well paid people. They have some of the best engineers in the industry that are out there. They have some of the top lawyers. There's a lot of money that sloshes around that is made available to these local council members for their campaigns and for their pet projects and so forth. And they're afraid of the industry. And these guys are able to push through bills that do some remarkable things. And I think the District of Columbia is a great example of that. In the District of Columbia, there are provisions, very strong provisions about notice. You actually have to receive a written notice, and to their credit, Crown Castle and Verizon and some of the other players there have been very good about notifying residents. But if you read the bill, you come to find out that once you get your notice, there's absolutely nothing you can do. There's no one that has any accountability, and certainly not the City Council of the District of Columbia, about where these poles are going to be placed. And the other thing that the District of Columbia did, which I think is just absolutely absurd, is that unlike Montgomery County, the District of Columbia has alleyways. Alleyways would have been the perfect place to put most of these poles. And guess what? There's almost none of these vendors want to put their poles in the alleyways. They want to put them right outside your bedroom windows on the sidewalks. And in many cases, they're very, very close to the individual residences all over the neighborhoods in DC now. And it really is unfortunate. That's why I was highlighting a little while ago, Aspen, City Council of Aspen just last night approved a document. And what they did was they went through, similar to what the District of Columbia did, was they went through and identified buildings, parks, neighborhoods where there were to be no small cell facilities whatsoever. And that you could not upset the forward plane of a building. So in other words, if I was standing on the street and I was looking at the Hotel Jerome and downtown area of Aspen, I can't put a small cell facility there and ruin that vista. Likewise, there's some certain strategic views of the surrounding mountains. I can't put a small cell up. And those are design standards, which we do not have in Montgomery County. They do have design standards in DC, but interestingly enough, they really only reflect landmark buildings down on the National Mall and the U.S. Capitol and things like that. They don't really get back into the neighborhoods and protect any of the vistas and skyscapes and streetscapes in the neighborhoods.
Well, I would add, I was at the, I think it was two hearings in Washington, D.C. on small cells and 5G. And there was a long discussion about, the citizens were saying, well, first of all, let me say, there were so many groups whose sole job was to protect trees, including the Sierra Club, that just came out and testified one after the other of what about the trees? What are you doing? But when the conversation came about those alleyways, industry said they didn't want them in the alleyways, that they had to be out where the people were. And also, they said that they would not and could not share, or some of the companies said, we will not share poles which is how the whole discussion about, well, what does that mean? I mean, that could mean several poles per block. That becomes critical. Now for the new ZTA, the setback is 30 feet, but even that can change. And am I correct that at 30 feet, if it's 31 feet away from your home, say, there doesn't have to be any public process. There'll be no hearings, no notice.
No, that is absolutely correct. In the District of Columbia, sorry about that.
In Montgomery County, I'm talking about the proposed ZTA.
Oh yeah, no, in Montgomery County, same thing. Under the limited use, we have these two different distinctions, limited use and conditional use. But limited use, as long as your small cell facility would fit inside the limited use standards, then there is no notice, there is no hearing, there are no rights of appeal or anything, unless you're able to prove some sort of completely outrageous thing. And given the dysfunction of the processes now, where nobody listens to you even if you do find something that's glaringly wrong, the individual residents have absolutely no control. Just look at that pole over there at 7800 Brickyard Road. There's almost nothing you can do now. Let me stress to you, however, that some of these things that are being done for years and years and years are simply coddling the industry. A building permit in Montgomery County requires posting. And a building permit is required for every small cell facility under the Montgomery County Code. But guess what? They haven't been issuing building permits for 20 years, and no one has ever implied that there had to be posting when you put up a permit, right? But in fact, if you read the code, it says I have to have if I get a building permit, I have to put up a sign that says I've applied for a permit. Here's the details on the permit. Here's where you can go if you have a question or you have a concern about it. Not so with the wireless facility. Not because the code says it's okay, it's because the Department of Permitting Services has abrogated their responsibility, ignored their duties to the people of Montgomery County for more than 20 years, and no one has required any kind of posting. So these are the kinds of things we're trying to bring to the attention of the county executive to see if we can't get them fixed. And we do have a new head of Department of Permitting Services who says that they want to try and do a better job than they have in the past. But we'll see how that actually turns out.
Wow, well, thank you so much. This is so important, every aspect of it. I want to read a couple questions. So I've heard other jurisdictions are stopping 5G and the towers by having stringent permit provisions requiring NEPA review, pollution insurance requirements, high application fees, requiring master plans for emerging technologies. I also know there are cities that are doing pre and post radiation measurements and regular yearly application fees that they have to cover actual costs, of course, which would be just testing the radiation levels as part of the application fee. And you talked about Sue Present's proposal for the zoning, which would include some of these aspects.
Yes, absolutely. The comprehensive antenna proposal that Sue Present took more than a year and a half to write this thing, and it's an amazing document. There definitely are provisions in there with respect to fees to assure that at all levels the proper charges are being levied and assessed for the wireless regulation that would have to be done in order to make sure that these guys are in compliance. And part of that would include radiation checks, of which I want to assure everybody on this phone call, Montgomery County does 0 radiation emissions checks on any facility anywhere in Montgomery County, including those that are located on school grounds. None, 0, zip. They are reliant upon assertions put forward by applicants, usually with respect to individual antennas, not aggregate antennas, but individual antennas, about whether or not those antennas are in conformance with FCC requirements. And it is when you aggregate those antennas that we run into problems, but Montgomery County refuses to do any of that testing. And most of the situations that we have been able to fling back at the Tower Committee, including the one on the Park Ritchie apartment building in Tacoma Park, was because the applicant had voluntarily submitted an engineer's report that said, oh, by the way, this facility is 2,598% over the maximum permissible public limit of radio frequency emissions. And you know, it took quite a lot of effort to get the Tower Committee to actually stand up and do something about it. And to their credit, in the one very rare instance that I've seen them actually do anything relative to radiation, radio frequency emissions, was they actually agreed to table consideration until the applicant came back with more details on what the actual exposures were. That was in November of 2019. They have not returned. And so the facility still functions up there. They haven't replaced the antennas they received and replaced, but it's still 2,598% out of conformance.
Yeah, you know, I just to go out a bit, in other countries, they have a regular radiation monitoring that is happening as part of the government monitoring plan. And actually they're setting this up more and more with 5G. I know France and Switzerland just came out saying we're going to have regular monitoring going on to assure that there's no breach of our limits that we have set. Whereas here in the United States, with the EPA being defunded, you know, over 2 decades ago now, and really there are no checks in place anywhere in the United States. The last reports we have from the EPA, when they used to do monitoring going into cities and measuring, are from the 80s. We have all of that up on our website. And there are a few questions about this. One, is there a citizen scientist movement to monitor RF radiation accurately for ourselves in our own neighborhoods without relying on government or industry? And I would say, yes, certainly in the United States, that's happening. If you go online, and I can put some more links into the chat with, especially communities in California, they are doing a lot of measuring of what is going on in different communities. There is a huge effort in cities in California on this issue, where there's monitoring, they're bringing in experts with high-level meters to take measurements. And here in Montgomery County, there are people who have meters to do measurements, but one of the challenges always becomes the way that the different meters and how the measuring is taking place. But I think that it really makes sense to do pre and post measuring before and after installations by citizen scientists to know what is going on. There was a study that was published in 2 communities, I don't have it in front of me, but in Europe, where they looked at communities with the small cell deployment and without the small cell deployment, and found increased levels of the ambient levels of the radio frequency radiation, which would be from the antennas in those communities that had small cells deployed. So we would expect that there would be, of course, an increase, especially if you're near the facility. And there are a lot of actual lawsuits going on directly in California right now also. Someone asked about a timeline for our lawsuit. We actually just got a action happened in the suit now, and I know that briefs will be, I think in 1 month now will be the first briefs, unless there's any actions to change the date for EHT's lawsuit. Legal appeal to the FCC. Someone asked, are they doing this elsewhere, like in Baltimore, other parts of the country, ignoring permits, etc.? And I can say what I have heard from people around the country is yes, that the whole thing is rolling out. There are just a mess at so many levels. In fact, I'm going to show you a picture of, I'm going to just show you a picture real quick. That this is from Miami, where the elected officials are actually in outrage. I actually wish I had the clip. And this was a picture in the paper where people were saying, what is going on? Everything's being dug up, and there's just a mess on the roadways and obstructions in the roadways from all the facilities that are in the middle of being built.
Oh, that's amazing. I can show you real quick. I wanted to illustrate what's going on in the District of Columbia, just to kind of show you something. Can I share one quick picture with you?
Yeah.
And I know we're already at the 9 o'clock point, so this will just be real brief. Let's see if I can get it to come up here. Hang on a second. Share. Did it show? No.
I can see it.
That's right. Oh, sorry about that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What I'm showing you is a picture of a pole at 6th and I believe that's F Streets southeast in Washington, D.C. And it is right down the street from the Marine Barracks. If you look to your right, that's 6th Street at the intersection there. You go down 4 doors and it's the birthplace of John Philip Sousa. That house on the corner that's right there on the right of the circle was built in the 1870s. The house on the left was built in the 1860s. The whole neighborhood up there is historic properties, and it is John Boehner, the former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, is 3 doors down on your left side there. Why I'm pointing this out is that this is what's going on in what you would have to call even the more fashionable neighborhoods. And what's not shown there, that particular mock-up is trying to show where the antenna would go. What's not shown is the box that is actually bolted to the pole, but there is an equipment box that goes down there. And this was a facility that was being built by AT&T. The district law allows other vendors, Crown Castle, Verizon, whoever, to come in and put their equipment up if they can find a pole. They don't have to necessarily co-locate. They're encouraged to, but they don't have to. But I think the measurement from the bedroom windows there is something close to 25 feet from the house. And there is an alleyway behind the house on the right. Directly behind it, there is an alleyway that runs, as it does all up down Capitol Hill there, that they could have put it. But instead, they wanted to put it in the most obtrusive location they could, not because they needed it, because the signal would easily go from the alleyway back out to the street, but because they just wanted it to have the maximum possible coverage that they could eke out of it, and to have it be able to beam into everybody's houses. And by the way, that is a 5G transmitter that will be in that antenna. The occupant of the house on the left gave me the letter that this picture came from, which was the notice, the required notice. But if you read the notice, there's absolutely nothing. It doesn't tell you where to go if you have a question. It doesn't tell you what you can do if you don't think it's a good location. It's just, hey, it's coming and there's nothing you can do about it, right? But the notice is required.
Right. I put in the chat a link to the Sierra Club testimony, and I think the video, if you watch the video, it's part of a whole series that includes Washington, D.C. testimony. And I'll also put in the submissions that we gave to Washington, D.C., because they are just in a situation where they have no ability to, I mean, I do believe that this can actually be addressed, but they're being told that there is nothing they can do. I believe there's always something.
Well, and the big problem is that it's very time consuming and difficult for community groups to get their hands on information to be able to tally this stuff up and shame the city council into taking action about it. But the city council has absolved themselves of it. They've washed their hands of it, and they put it in the responsibility of what do they call it, the ward captains, or they have these little advisory councils that each of the different little wards have within the district. And so everybody, as they really do here in Montgomery County, they all point their fingers at somebody else and say, well, I don't have any responsibility for that, somebody else does. And ultimately, what we're going to try and do as we come into this next round, when Hans is going to be bringing this back up this summer, is we're going to try to make them, shame them a little bit by bringing out some more fresh data and fresh reports to show them just how out of control this whole approval process has been for 20 years, and that absolutely nobody has any responsibility. And to put through a zoning ordinance and to say that things are going to magically get better when it's so completely out of control right now. That map you just showed me from a database that makes no sense whatsoever. It goes on, and we need to fix that first.
And there are also, from what I saw from some of, when I went into the Tower Commission's documents, I'm sure you're well familiar with this, but in addition to these quote unquote small cells, and small cell is an industry created word, there's nothing small about a small cell, but they didn't want to say cell tower, are also these strand mounted antennas, which are able to go through with total loopholes where on the power lines, there can be these metal things that are placed that then have antennas on them as well. And all of this is not being put forward in a transparent manner for all of us. I mean, we should all be told, like, where are these antennas going? What's the process? How do we get involved in an understandable?
Well, I'll tell you what, I can give you a very specific example that may be relevant to at least some of the people that are on the call. If you go back to the map that had the triangles and the stars on it, would you go back to that map and zoom in on Silver Spring and Tacoma Park? And I can show you exactly where they want to put those first strand-mounted antennas. And I can also explain to you, we've stopped them at the moment, but I know they're going to want to come back really hard with them. But if you bring that map up and just zoom in, go kind of take your little arrow and find Silver Spring. So take the beltway around that cluster of red stars there in Silver Spring, zoom in on it. There you go. And now scroll down a little bit so that we can see the beltway just a bit. Okay, now, so bring the map back down and go back up to the beltway. Okay. Right there. The little red star that's there between Argyle Park and Forest Glen, those neighborhoods right there on both sides of the Beltway are the first targeted neighborhoods where strand-mounted facilities were planned. And Crown Castle has been furiously burying fiber optic cable and hanging fiber optic cable all over those neighborhoods without going to the Tower Committee, right? Without going to the Tower Committee. And what they started to try and do was to start to put through some of the original applications for those strand-mounted antennas. And we went to the Tower Committee and we went to DPS and we said, wait a minute, the Tower Committee says these things are okay, but if the Tower Committee had bothered to read the zoning code, which they clearly have not, but we do hope that the Department of Permitting Services would actually bother to read the zoning code. Our zoning code says that all equipment must be in a cabinet. Strand-mounted antennas require the equipment to be hung on the cable, right? And we said, sorry, you can't put any equipment on a strand. It has to be in a cabinet, and that cabinet has to be fixed somewhere, either to a pole or what we don't want to do, put it in the ground. And so for the moment, strand-mounted equipment in Montgomery County is not permissible. But I would be willing to bet you dimes to donuts that Mr. Reamer will try to get that inserted in his 1907 when he reintroduces it as an amendment. And I think that there's no question in my mind that the folks from Crown Castle are trying some workarounds. Right now, they've been putting those up on state roads because the state has their own zoning authority over poles that are on state roads, University Boulevard and Rockville Pike, and those are all state roads. And so if you want to put a strand-mounted antenna up, you can put it on a state road, which is what they've been trying to do. And we're fighting that as well.
there's a lot going on.
Too much going on. Yeah.
Right. Well, I want to just say one other thing that someone asked was, what is the solution? And I put in the chat a report on the future of landlines and networks about wires, because right now what's happening, when you talked about Crown Castle coming in and putting in fiber optic, so you lay this fiber optic, which is super fast, it's like a thick cord with the data goes through it, and then it goes to a pole or to a facility where then it sprays out in the wireless form like an antenna. But a solution is municipally owned fiber, where there's the fiber optic, but the majority of the things we do happen through corded connections brought into the home. Now, in some communities, and what some of the experts are saying is, look, we already have what we need if we just use it. So in many neighborhoods, not all, in Montgomery County, you can get, through Comcast or Verizon, internet, and then in your home, you choose what kind of technology that you want to be in your home. I use wires, so I have corded connections for, like right now, this Zoom meeting, I have it on a corded connection. It doesn't drop, it's super fast. I don't have the Wi-Fi. So we can all choose what we want to come into our home instead of having it outside. In fact, the crazy thing is that with 5G technology, for some frequencies that don't go through your window, you actually have to put this apparatus and put it up to your window, and it's super ugly. I'm not sure anyone who would want this. It goes up to your window to catch the signal, bring it in, and then you have like a little base station in your home that then puts it out in your home. Whereas if we did the majority of our work where we're sitting down at an office at a table wired, then we wouldn't need this technology. And by the way, the phones are costing over $1,000. I'm not sure who's purchasing them. Now, in the communities that do not have access, there needs to be an assessment to look at, well, how do we fix this problem? But 5G is not going to fix the problem, even though it's being touted as solving the digital divide. There are actually several reports, we have those on our website, about how they're not addressing the digital divide issue, and in fact, it is not even, that is shown to not be the case in the communities where they're deploying small cells. So
Has packed the LA County Board of Supervisors meeting today to protest giant cell towers at their stations. CBS 2's Dave Lopez shows us why they have serious concerns.
This is a step in the right direction, not only for the firefighters and the firefighter safety, but for the citizens we serve.
The problem is that wireless uses microwaves, and that when you microwave people, over time they get sick.
And for hours, speaker after speaker addressed the County Board of Supervisors today, saying that the installation of the county's new emergency radio...
I know scientifically that putting up these cell phone towers is safe.
But the International Association of Firefighters disagrees. They began opposing cell towers on fire stations after firefighters complained of health problems.
These firefighters developed symptoms.
Dr. Gunnar Heuser conducted a pilot study on firefighters at a station with cell towers.
And the symptoms included problem with memory, problem with intermittent confusion, problem with weakness.
Heuser says their brain scans suggest even low-level RF can cause cell damage, and he worries about more vulnerable groups like kids.
So we found abnormal brain function in all of the firefighters we examined.
So, following lobbying by firefighters, Cork and his co-author exempted fire stations from their bill, making them one place cell companies couldn't put a tower.
This is the first piece of legislation that I think anyone's aware of where somebody got an exemption because they were concerned about health. Did they tell you at all about the study?
All I know is that when the firefighters ask, I do what they ask me to do.
Because they're strong lobbyists?
Yes.
So if, say, school teachers and parents had a strong lobby and they asked you to pass something that would prevent these from going up in your schools, would you do that?
If I couldn't get the votes any other way.
Firefighter and cancer survivor Tony Stefani notes,
It's not only firefighters, it's the people that live in the general vicinity of these towers.
current regulations don't take into account continuous low-level exposure from these small cells 24 hours a day.
More of these studies have to be done.
There are 230 scientists from 41 countries who have apparently reviewed more than 2,000 peer-reviewed studies, and they're
5G fifth generation technology promises faster download speeds and conveniences that most of us have never dreamed of, but will also be blanketed with a new type of radiation called millimetre waves. Health experts are warning about the rising risks with a 5G rollout.
It's not been made clear to the public that 5G won't just be another number and letter on your cell phone. It requires an entirely new infrastructure of thousands of small cellular antennas to be erected throughout cities where it's going to be installed.
What would 5G infrastructure look like? Small cell antennas could be placed as close as every third hydro pole. Scientists from 42 countries are now warning their governments about the emerging health problems associated with wireless radiation, and Canadian doctors and scientists have added their voices.
The most prevalent symptoms include headache, fatigue, decreased ability to concentrate, tinnitus, irritability, and insomnia. Impacts on the heart and the nervous system are also of great concern.
Dr. Magda Havas is internationally recognized for her research on the biological effects of electromagnetic pollution. She said that at high intensities, these waves cause intense heat and pain because sweat glands on the surface of our skin act like mini antennas.
At lower frequency, scientists are predicting damage to eyes, loss of insect populations which are already declining, antibiotic resistance in bacteria, and physiological effects on the nervous system and on the immune system.
One advisor to the World Health Organization said there's enough evidence that if they were to re-evaluate radiofrequency radiation,
it would be placed in class 1, i.e. a human carcinogen, and governments could not possibly ignore that.
Hello, my name is Frank Clegg, and I've spent over 40 years in the technology sector. My most recent position as a president of Microsoft Canada. In my career, I've seen the tremendous benefit that technology can provide. I've also seen the potential harm if technology is not implemented correctly. And I believe our current implementation of wireless technology is not safe. That's why I co-founded Canadians for Safe Technology and why I joined the business advisory group of the Environmental Health Trust. I am especially concerned about our current implementation of 5G wireless technology. And the more research I do and the more experts I talk to, the more concerned I become. Now, there's no doubt that there are benefits such as autonomous vehicle and faster download speeds. At the same time, I think there is potential harm. I think it's important that we understand that 5G is not just an incremental number on our cell phones. In fact, over 230 scientists and researchers from 41 countries around the world have formally written to the United Nations, their member nations, and the World Health Organization, expressing their concern over the planned rollout of 5G technology, especially for vulnerable populations such as children, pregnant women, and the environmentally sensitive. They have been joined by state legislatures and federal regulators who have asked the FCC to provide evidence that there is no harm from the rollout of 5G technology. There is no doubt that the engineers and businesses and companies that roll out technology are well-meaning. However, their focus is on being first to market and getting new products into the market as efficiently and quickly as they can. I am not aware of any research or studies by my industry or related industry that deal at all with the health or safety effects of wireless technology. Here are some important facts about 5G. 5G technology has not been tested. I am not aware of a single study that shows that 5G technology is safe. 5G, as in all other wireless technology, gives off radio frequency radiation, which is absorbed in the human body and accumulates in the human body. One segment of 5G technology are millimeter waves. Millimeter waves are used by the US and Israeli government in their active denial systems, which are used for crowd control. And what they do is they provide a very painful reaction in the skin organs of the body. We have no idea what the impacts will be to human health if that kind of millimeter wave technology is used and we are exposed to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are significant proven health effects from wireless technology and wireless devices. These include insomnia, headaches, fatigue, heart palpitations, all caused by exposure to wireless devices and the radiation from them. More serious symptoms and conditions include heart arrhythmia, infertility, tinnitus, numbness or tingling in the extremities, diabetes, cancer, and permanent DNA damage. Mental health is also impacted, with increased anxiety, depression, rises in ADHD and autism, mood swings, and emotional instability. In fact, all of these health factors and conditions have risen exponentially over the last 30 years, and hundreds of studies that show proof of biological harm from wireless devices. Most recently, in 2018, the National Institute of Health's National Toxicology Program released the findings of a 14-year, $25 million study that showed clear evidence of harm in terms of cancer and permanent DNA damage. This study, several months later, was verified by the prestigious Ramazzini Institute out of Italy, which found the same results. Now you may ask how a product that has this potential harm could ever be released to the market and to the public for public use. Well, the way the process works is the FCC regulates all wireless devices and products associated with them. Unfortunately, the FCC is made up of previous telecom executives, lawyers, and engineers. It does not have any scientists or doctors that you would expect to be involved with the regulation of potentially harmful products. In fact, the FCC guidelines are 20 years out of date without any major significant improvement. Countries such as China, Russia, Italy, and Switzerland have safety guidelines that are 100 times safer for their citizens. The FCC guidelines are based on small, short-term, infrequent exposure. They do not worry about the accumulated effects for multiple devices. They don't measure or monitor exposure 24 hours a day or 7 days a week. And they have no special consideration for children, pregnant women, or those who have shown environmentally sensitivities to wireless radiation. In addition to the concerns about the guidelines, there is actually no oversight provided by the FCC, and in fact the telecommunications industry is self-policing. So what we are left with is almost a Wild West scenario where the regulations and the guidelines are significantly lacking and the industry is left to its own accord to roll this technology out to the marketplace. In addition to the concerns about the FCC guidelines themselves, the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996 prohibits any telecommunication company to be sued on the basis of the safety or health of their products. So in other words, there is no liability to the telecommunications industry of any of the impacts of their products. Just last week, the reinsurer Swiss Re came out with their annual forecasts, and they specifically identified 5G technology as an upcoming insurable health concern globally over the next 3 years. There is also mounting evidence that the telecommunications industry knew about the potential impacts of RF radiation years ago. And in fact, we're starting to see some of the behavior from my industry similar to what the tobacco industry did over the last few decades. The telecommunications industry has over 500 lobbyists working in Congress and other areas of legislature protecting the industry. Together, all of these issues that I've referenced, plus the general lack of awareness in the general public, have led us to the situation where we are today. So where are we today? Today we currently have a significant amount of exposure in our homes, in our businesses, in our schools, and in most public areas we go to. Cisco has announced and predicted by 2030 there will be over 500 billion wirelessly connected devices in the world. That works out to be almost 60 devices for every person on the planet. Many states and cities around the world are debating and passing legislation about the rollout of 5G technology. And in fact, what we're seeing in the US is at the federal and the state level, they're fast-tracking some of this legislation to support the rollout of 5G infrastructure. Unfortunately, this legislation seems to be taking away all individual rights and the rights of local towns and counties and cities and passing more power to the telecommunication companies. We believe this is a historic and precedent-setting power shift from the individual and state and local level over to an industry. In fact, many communities in the US and around the world are passing moratoriums preventing the rollout of 5G technology until it is proven safe. 5G will impact you personally. There are designs that show the requirement for small cell 5G antennas as close as every third house in the neighborhood and could be as close as every 500 feet in public areas. The impact of that radiation at that level of frequency and intensity and power 24 hours a day and 7 days a week is unprecedented and is not understood. I've spent the last 5 years of my life, I've had the opportunity to meet with experts on a worldwide basis who have spent their careers studying the impact of wireless radiation and devices. I've also had the opportunity to meet with some of the great minds in the technology sector who have helped create these tremendous products that we use in our lives and provide tremendous benefit to us. I am convinced that there are safer alternatives available so we can have the best of both worlds. Technology that can provide the tremendous benefits, but technology that is safe. There is no incentive or motivation to provide the research and the funding to look for safer alternatives. So that's why it's up to us to help encourage that investment. That can be by asking our legislators to pass legislation, encouraging industry to do it, or it can be by us directly trying to advocate for change in the industry to allow them to become more responsible to provide safer technology that still provides tremendous benefit. We can't do this all on our own. We need your help. Here's what you can do. The most important thing is to get educated. We have provided a little bit of an overview and some of the scientific evidence that shows there's a potential harm. But now you have to take the initiative. There are some tremendous websites, Canadians for Safe Technology, the Environmental Health Trust, saferemr.com, and the Physicians for Safe Technology. There are also other resources that are listed at the end of this video. We encourage you to spread the word, share this information, share the video with your coworkers, with your family, with your friends, with legislators at the state and federal level. Even your local school boards can have an impact if they choose to engage. Ultimately, your knowledge is in your power, and your power is in your hands. I fundamentally believe we can have the best of both worlds. That is access to the technology and the tremendous benefits it provides, but in a safe manner. We are advocates for safe technology, not no technology. I thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm David Carpenter. I'm the director of the Institute for Health and the Environment at the University of Albany, and in addition to that, I'm a professor of environmental health sciences and biomedical sciences in the School of Public Health. My training is in medicine. I'm a public health physician. I'm the former dean of the School of Public Health. My personal research is focused primarily on the study of human diseases that result from exposure to environmental chemicals. Right now, much of my attention is focused on the effects of polychlorinated bipheноls, PCBs, and chlorinated pesticides like DDT, where we're demonstrating relationships to chronic diseases that people suffer, diseases not normally considered to be a result of environmental exposure. These include high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and also some diseases like Alzheimer's disease. The big question right now is cell phones and cell phone towers and Wi-Fi and the electronic devices that we all have and use. What we want to do in public health is prevent disease. And the only
Happening today, people around the world will protest the rolling out of 5G cell towers and satellites, including right here in San Diego. This is video from a 5G protest downtown last year. Today's global protest will take place in more than 32 countries. Protesters are concerned about the environmental and health impacts the 5G towers and satellites could have. They also plan to submit an international appeal signed by nearly 200,000 people to different governments around the world.
An eye-opening new study from Yale finds some disturbing links between cell phones and pregnancy. Kent Pierce live in News 8 Control this morning with more. Good morning, Kent.
Good morning, Ann. Well, if you're pregnant and talk on your cell phone a lot, your kid might grow up to have behavioral problems. It's as simple as that, according to researchers at Yale. They took a bunch of pregnant mice, put half in a cage with a cell phone that was on all the time, and after all those mice were born and grew up, they compared the cell phone mice with the control group. Researchers found the ones exposed to the cell phone tended to be more hyperactive and had worse memories. If they were human, we'd call that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Well, now mice are...
California City is fighting back at a proposed law that is moving quickly through the legislature. They say it would allow phone companies to put up new antennas in your neighborhood, whether you like it or not. KPX 5's Phil Matier in Walnut Creek. And Phil, today you heard some of the opposition in Sacramento, right?
That's right, and a lot of it is based on what you see around us here in Walnut Creek. You're walking down the street in the downtown of your little town, and you maybe one day will look up at a street lamp like this, and sitting on top of it is something totally unexpected, a cell phone antenna. Here's the story.
5G wireless has the potential to be a game changer.
But to pave the way for that game change, telecom companies need to put up between 30,000 and 50,000 of these small cell antennas, including several likely in your town over the next 5 years, but with only limited local say.
Local neighborhoods would be seeing something the size of a refrigerator showing up on a street pole, and they could say nothing to stop it.
A library, a school.
On traffic signals, on light poles. This would give the companies free rein to install these small cells on any public infrastructure, and we would have no ability to say no.
On the other hand, the new network could also mean much faster internet service and keep California on the innovative cutting edge.
California was the epicenter of the last internet services resolution and can and should be the epicenter of the next one.
This investment and job creation will follow.
As for concerns about local say,
that SB 649 preserves local government's right to impose reasonable terms.
There's also the issue of money. The new rules would cap how much local cities and counties could charge telecom companies at $250 per antenna. That's a far cry from the $1,200 per antenna that cities like San Jose now get.
You're talking about an industry that will net more than $500 billion at full build-out.
You're also talking about an industry that is a big player in California politics. In the 2016 election cycle, telecommunication companies contribute over $3 million to both California Democrats and Republicans that are now deciding on this bill, which, by the way, shot through committee on a 6-1 vote with 2 abstentions. It's going.
Everyone wants 5G, faster internet, right? Downloads will improve and you'll get better cell service, but it means more of these cell phone towers. They will appear every 12 homes in neighborhoods, and some in the western suburbs aren't on board because they question the health risks. CBS 2's Jermont Terry is live in Hinsdale with the push to stop 5G. Jermont.
Erica, this wooden stick right here is just the beginning of the 5G rollout. Now, if the companies get their way, instead of a stick, there will be a cell tower here. But this tower will not be 20 or 30 feet high. And that has some people in this neighborhood saying there's a bigger price to pay for 5G.
So 5G.
Meet 3 Hinsdale moms. Paige.
It's very alarming.
Christine.
We need everyone to take a stand.
And Farhara.
This could be really bad.
The trio's on a mission to stop 5G from coming into town.
It is not just Hinsdale. Western Springs, Naperville, and Schaumburg.
A few months back, these wooden sticks popped up in yards throughout the western suburbs.
That was placed here by Verizon as a proposed site for a 5G transmitter.
Wireless companies insist 5G is expected to be 100 times faster than current speeds. But in order for the bands to travel, more transmitters are needed in closer proximity. The signal will be carried on new, smaller towers that can fit on light poles like these.
We are not against technology.
But the Stop 5G group questions just how safe all these smaller towers will be for those who walk and live here.
But before we become sort of the canary that is subjected to all of this, we want to actually have that data on safety be proven.
Many of the towers are expected to be near schools.
Bone marrow of a child absorbs 10 times the radiation of an adult.
The companies pushing 5G insisting what the towers will transmit is safe, but there's no concrete testing leaning for or against it. And until then, the Stop 5G group believes the project should halt. Flyers are popping up. These concerned moms expect hundreds to attend a town hall on Wednesday.
And we want people to just be educated on what 5G is, what they can do about it.
Now, besides the potential health hazard, people are also concerned about the fact that these towers will simply sit in their front yards, and that potentially will bring down their property values. As I pointed out, there will be a town hall meeting on this Wednesday. A huge crowd is expected.
5G technology is the latest and greatest in wireless communication. But just how safe is it? A new cell tower near a school in Lakeside has parents worried. 10 News anchor Lindsay Pena spoke with a group of mothers and a wireless communication expert. She's joining us now with that. Lindsay?
Hi, Kim. Well, those parents have been talking to anyone they can, trying to get this tower moved, but so far, nothing.
This is the new cell tower near Lakeview Elementary.
This just showed up overnight. There has been no explanation about it at all.
And Maria Tomasello and others are upset. They say a county ordinance states the tower should be at least 300 feet from the school, but they were told this particular site was approved before the new rule. They're worried about the safety of 5G technology.
People that will say that there's not enough evidence to show that this is harmful, but why would we want to take that chance and expose our children and our staff?
The group says they've reached out to lawmakers and AT&T, but haven't gotten the answers they want. 10 News contacted AT&T, which said the tower in question is actually using 4G technology, and there are currently no plans for 5G at that site. But these parents and many other concerned citizens have raised questions recently about the safety of 5G technology. So we consulted UCSD professor Sujit Day, who is director of the Center for Wireless Communications. He cautions people to be careful about where they get information from.
Let's look at scientific studies done and not rely on anything people are putting out there about 5G.
Right now, carriers are still working to fully deploy 5G technology. Professor Day says the main difference between 5G and 4G is the size and frequency of the electromagnetic wavelength. 5G uses a higher frequency millimeter wave, which is faster but doesn't travel as far and can be blocked by things like buildings. That means 5G requires smaller but more towers every few blocks rather than every few miles. Professor Day says the bottom line is there's still more to learn, but he believes the technology is safe and may even prove safer than what we've been using.
It's much safer actually than what these big towers would have been.
Now, there is a rally planned by those concerned parents at Lakeview Elementary tomorrow at 3:30. Anyone is welcome to attend. Reporting in the studio, Lindsay Pena, 10 News.
An important topic these days. Thank you, Lindsay. A group.
So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you can connect with the groups that I put in the chat. I can also send out a follow-up email to you so that you can sign up for certainly our newsletter, Environmental Health Trust, if you want to know about the science and the national, international policy, Rick Meyer's site, and MoCo SafeG as well.